Innovation, security, programming, technology, development.
Let's begin.
DevSecOps. DevSecOps, your cybersecurity and technology podcast.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming with us one more time. It's a pleasure to have you here. This is one more episode of DevSecOps podcast. I think it's the episode number 153. So it's a lot of episodes, a lot of hours, a lot of content that you can follow up on us. I would suggest that you, in Portuguese, we would say you need to marathon. Yeah, we have a marathon of episodes from the first season until now. A lot of content, a lot of nice guests like we have today that I will introduce in a moment. Before, I'm Cássio Pereira.
I am Benhur.
And it's a pleasure also to announce that the DevSecOps podcast comes in partnership with Checkmarks and Nova 8, which are specialized in secure coding or secure development, let's say. All the links and all the information about Checkmarks and Nova 8 you can find on DevSecOps podcast.com.br, also on the YouTube the YouTube video on the link here on the descriptions. Also, if you are looking for solutions in application security, you can talk with Digital Woke and Gold Security. They are specialized in application security services. So anything that you need from them, please talk to Gold Security. Okay, so today we have a very nice guest here. I'll introduce him in a moment. Calm down. But first, I want to introduce the episode today. It's a very nice topic. I would say it's a topic that usually we don't even think about it, right, Benhur? Because we talk about data protection. We talk about protecting the user's data, the customer data, and so on. But usually we forget that we need to protect ourselves, that we need to protect the company's data, right? What do you think about this topic in general? We are forgetting about this, or no? We don't need to worry about this.
No, it's really important for two things mainly. First, we need to back up because we can make mistakes by ourselves. We need to back up because we can have an attack that compromise our environment. But we need to store data to recover the data. Perfect. And about our operation. About the time to make all the things work again properly. Yeah, this is a challenge one.
Okay, sure. Cool. So to discuss further and deeper about this topic, we have here today Grzegorz. Grzegorz, thank you for your time. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for being here. We know it's a challenge for agenda, for timing, for everything. So again, please, you have the whole stage for you. Introduce yourself, talk about yourself a bit, what you are doing today, and then we start discussing about the topic. I have already a lot of questions out of my mind. Yeah? Again, welcome.
Thank you very much, Cássio and Benhur, for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Zagraba. I'm pre-sales engineer at GitProtect, company which specializes in DevOps data security, but we'll come to that in a moment. And professionally, I've been always working on the verge of business and technology. That's why this topic is so close to me, because it nicely demonstrates how important technology is to keep our business running and how sometimes we forget about small details that can make our business running as well.
Cool. Thank you again for being here. Ben, you have already some questions. You have things to, because I'm excited with this topic, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. I want to start with a hot one. Okay?
Go on.
Greg, what the main mistake of the companies when talk about backup?
I think that the number one mistake that everybody did at some point is misplacing our trust. And misplacing our trust means that once nowadays we are in the era of using SaaS services left and right. And it's nothing uncommon for a company to use cloud infrastructure from a company like GitHub, GitLab, or Atlassian to manage their most critical data and to manage their operations. And it's something that doesn't only happen in the IT, the sense we see in sales, marketing, and other departments. And we are 100% confident in our minds that because I'm using such a SaaS service, my data is secure with the service provider. Because I'm paying their money to take care of me, I'm not doing any maintenance of my infrastructure, so they are doing it. They take care of that. And here we come to the point when we've misplaced our trust, because when we read into the terms of service of GitHub or any other similar platform, we are going to find sets of clauses which are commonly known as shared responsibility model, which is a very nice way of framing the statement that we as a vendor, as a SaaS platform, take responsibility for our platform, our infrastructure, to make sure that it's running, but whatever you put in our platform as a user and whatever your team members do in your common shared platform is your own responsibility, which offloads the responsibility for data security, and data integrity from the platform to the user. And in many cases, when I speak to companies, I even had a nice chat about this with 2 days ago with a company from Canada, which was working for government. And I asked them how you guys are securing your data nowadays. We're using GitHub. And I had to tell them, guys, but GitHub is the tool that you use to manage versions of your code, to embrace collaboration of your team, to have the smooth flow of information in the software development process. But GitHub is not the tool to secure your data. GitHub is telling you openly, but you're not checking that, hey, whatever you do in our platform, whatever data you put in, that's your own deal.
Exactly. And I would add to this point that Gregor mentioned, specifically about this shared responsibility, because you might have the best cloud provider with the best solutions activated, with infinite money, whatever. But then you set up the main account of the administrator with the password 123 or admin. Yeah. So the whole doesn't matter what you have there, you are already compromising yourself, and the cloud provider has no responsibility on this. I mean, some of them they might be enforcing already some password policies, some specific things to avoid, like two-factor authentication, to avoid this kind of mistakes. But still, this shared responsibility is something that customers usually they neglect, right? Like, okay, I'm paying the best provider, so I don't need to care. As Greg just mentioned, I have GitHub, so I'm secure. My code is secure. Like, no, if you have a public repo, it's already not safe. It's already public exposed, right?
Yeah, exactly. And some of the vendors even take it to the level. For example, Atlassian, they say that if they can prove that the data loss incident was even in a minimal way caused by something that you could have prevented, they are already taking their heads away from it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, guys, you could have prevented it. This means that you now have to fix this. So they are very, very thorough in how they set up their terms of service to offload any chances of taking actual responsibility for something.
And Greg, just a question. All this information, usually they're on these small letters on the contract, right? That nobody reads, yeah?
Exactly this.
There's a small header inside the link to another document.
Yes. On a modal.
Yeah. The honest question that we need to ask ourselves, when was the last time that you read terms of service of a platform that you're using?
True. Zero. I know I read at all. I don't read at all.
Exactly.
I probably will not read the terms of my sentence of death. Probably I will read them from probably not.
Yeah, and what's even funnier, what I've seen working in sales and sales operations throughout the years, is that if you are buying from the small company, you're always going to thoroughly analyze their terms of service, SLI, and everything. But if you're buying from the big player like GitHub, of course, GitHub has everything in order. Nobody's going to read their terms of service.
Yeah, and we have a good example. A month ago or something like this, that Google deleted a specific customer, their whole data from the Google Cloud, also the backups that were mirrored in another site, and Google, by human mistake, as they said, they deleted everything, right? And good that the specific customer, I think it was financial institution, and they had backups even outside of the Google platform. So they know how important was the data for them, how was the whole business operation and so on. that they have at Google GCP, right? Google Cloud Platform, backups on another site, even on the Google platform, and a third backup in somewhere else to avoid this kind of disaster. So, as you said, Greg, now sometimes you just trust big players, but they also have some mistakes, right? They also run softwares developed by people that they also might lead to some problems, right? Or hacking or whatever.
Yeah. And you touched here the great point about those three different backups that this company said. And I think it's super important because this is also a rookie mistake I see a lot working in data security, that even if we decide to make a backup, we create only one copy, we have only one storage where we keep the data, and we think that we are secure. And the good practice is to do exactly what the company that you mentioned did. So to have storage replication. So to move this data to completely different place, completely different vendor. I typically recommend also to switch cross, I would say cross hosting. So if your primary backup is in cloud, make replication to some on-prem storage and the other way around, so that if you have failure on one level, you can still restore from the another one. So that's at least, in this whole incident, that's one good thing to take away from it: storage replication.
I think, go on, Benyu, you have some question or something? No?
Yeah, no, a point about the criticality of this operation is because normally when we have a backup, we have one area or some persons, a number of persons like 5, 6, 10 persons that have access to this backup and the process. When we are running, for example, in GitHub or GitLab or anything, your entire IT accessing this environment. We have a bunch of administrators. The number of actors that could be compromised that has access to this environment is completely different from all the people that have access to the backup and the strategy of the backup. So if we have, like Greg say, in well form is we have a GitHub, perfect, and about the access management and about the compromise in access management attack surface and the backup, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, and that's
So
that's why we come together. Like as you said, IT and security. They we always walk handed, yeah, because they need to, how to say, rely on each other, right? One depends on the other somehow, and this is perfect scenario for this example. Huh? I have one more maybe example to bring to the conversation, which is something very hot. I think Ben unfortunately knows about this because he's living on the south of Brazil, where exactly now they are suffering from extremely floods. So rivers, a lot of rain, so the whole state is flooded. A terrible situation, and one organ of Brazilian government, I forgot the name now, but anyway, they have
prosthetics.
yeah, they have their servers on that area on premise, right? And everything is flooded, so they lost their servers and the backups as well on the same. They are in different sites, but in the same region, and the whole state is basically flooded. So they are basically offline for all this time. I don't know if they already recovered or something, or they did something different, but as far as I know, they are offline, right? You have some.
They are offline. Most of the services are now not running, not available for us. They uploaded all the things to the cloud as a mitigation strategy for this catastrophe, but they do not have any running platform on the cloud. So the backup the data theoretically is safe, but the operation not.
They cannot do anything, yeah. So whatever you need, you can't do. Yeah, so it's a typical example. I think it's the same example as the World Trade Center, right? 9 September in the United States, that the company has the backups in the tower 1 and the operation in tower 2, because they never imagined that the two towers would go down, huh? And I think because of 9 September, there was some regulations that you need to have like 10 kilometers distance for financial institutions, the site 1 and site 2, something like this, kind to avoid this kind of things. Yeah,
Yeah, but that's a good question, Gacho, because what we are backupping? No, that's the thing. We have geolocation backup strategy, no, about, for example, something like that, thematic problems, etc. But what we are backupping, and that's another question for Greg. That is about what matters first for priority. What the company should backup the and what's the most difficult to backup and restore, in your opinion?
Okay, so the first short answer to your question is what we should back up is everything. Because at the end of the day, we would love to, in case of disaster scenario, we would love to restore everything and continue working with all the data as nothing happened. So the dream scenario would be to back up everything. However, this is typically not possible. One, because of technical limitations that some companies face. Second, because the duration of backup or restore might be difficult. So we need to prioritize. And in prioritizing, when I design the backup strategy of the customer, for example, for the source code or the projects that they have, let's say in GitHub or in similar platform, I'm always asking them, okay, which of the projects are the mission critical ones that you're working on today, right now, and which of those are your archive? Something that you've done some time, you keep this code because it's application that's currently running your business, but it's not something that you're actively developing. And if we define those mission critical data, then we make the backups of this data with higher frequency. And typically, we even keep them in a separate storage because of how important they are. And if we have the data that we consider archive, then we maybe back up them with less frequency, and maybe we put them in a separate location. It's about assigning resources to the most important data and focusing especially on the DevOps processes and the software development. One thing which is very often neglected is that people say, okay, but why do I need to think in any specific way about my source code data or GitHub backup data or Bitbucket backup data? Because the source code itself is already distributed among developers. And even if we have some disaster scenario, even if we have failure of GitHub, we can still retrieve the source code from one of the developers' laptops. But the true point is, okay, but how much of your work every day is actually writing the code? How much of this are merges, pull requests, comments that you make in those projects, updating the wiki, making documentation, etc., everything around that. And this is part which is especially neglected if we are just starting with thinking about backup. So while building backup strategy, especially for DevOps organization, we should think, okay, it's not only about protecting the source code, it's also about everything else that sits in this platform, like sits in the GitHub, that actually constitutes your day-to-day work. Because the outcome of a good backup strategy is allowing you and your team to continue working as nothing happened. And if I would right now come in and remove all the issues from your GitHub or from your GitLab, you would probably say, no, I cannot continue working like this. So protecting just the source code is not enough.
Cool point.
Cool.
And this reminded me about a story that I don't know if it's true, but I heard when I was, I don't know, in the university time, that a company they were using Search Safe back then. You remember the Search Safe? For Visual Basic 6, the guys was using for Delphi and all these languages, but it was Search Safe, SVN, Subversion, this old stuff. Huh? And this company, they had a full platform of documentation on how to use their software. And on the documentation, they have code examples, like because it was for developers. So they had part of the source code examples, and so on and so forth. And their Search Safe server, it was lost. So they basically lost the whole source code of the application. How they restored the documentation was separate platform. So they basically are copy and paste page by page from the documentation parts of the source code that they had to try to rebuild the whole software. As far as I know, the history say that they could repair like 70-75% of the source code. Could be zero, so it's okay-ish. But imagine how fucking work they had to do, hours, taking, copying, paste, checking, rebuilding. Like, oh my god! I remember once I had to do some maintenance on some legacy code that they didn't have the source code as well. So I needed to take the DLL, do the decompile of the DLL to see the code, to be able to do something and rebuild because they needed to do some specific changes. Like backups, usually, as he says, Greg just said and being mentioned, it's important for data in general, data that we manipulate, but for our metadata, for our operation data, it's something very crucial. It's something that we cannot neglect again. And with this, I have one question to Greg. Greg, what is you just mentioned one example? I think it's source code is one good example. Could you give maybe two more examples? What is DevOps data? What kind of information companies should also take care? And okay, I should take care of backing up this, for example, because if I have a catastrophe, it's something that I never thought about that I need to have some restoring operation.
Okay, so I'll answer your question and then I touch upon some important point that you brought up. So when it comes to the DevOps data in general, the source code is only a smart part of it. We have all the metadata that constitute kind of the summary of developers' work, history of changes that we made to our code, history of collaboration on this code. But we also have some specific settings that operate in our DevOps infrastructure. That can be our pipelines, our automations that we use to either deploy our code to the production environment or to integrate our code development with QA department. But also in many cases, those are some settings that are even related to security to some degree. For example, in GitHub, it's possible to back up branch protection rules, which allows us also to set up some security to our data. We are able to back up our teams and collaborators to define who can access what data. And this is something that we don't think as critical data in the first place, but we notice that's when we miss it. And the same also with automations. Like they make our work every day that much faster, that much quicker. But if you would have to rebuild those automations from scratch, let's say that you've lost access to your GitHub account and you need to migrate to different GitHub account for the time being. Let's say even migrated from cloud to on-prem for the time being. Rebuilding out those automations that you have is tons of time from the DevOps engineer. Possibility to back up those and restore them streamlines your work massively. And important thing that you mentioned, Cassio, about the fact that company had backup in some way in this documentation, but it took them ages to restore it manually. I think it summarizes the most important thing about backup, in my opinion. The backup itself is not the rocket science. At the end of the day, making some sort of data dump is relatively easy. We can obviously improve how efficiently we do it. We can improve how we securely store this data, but this part is relatively easy. Important thing is what we can do with this backup next. So how we can restore the data. And in many cases, we are limiting ourselves and our imagination to only one simple scenario. I'm making backup of my GitHub project with a purpose that I want to restore it to GitHub. Okay, but what if GitHub has an outage? What are you going to do then? And then we come to the next disaster recovery scenarios that we should think about. Maybe I would like to be able to restore to completely different GitHub organization. Maybe I would like to be able to switch from cloud to on-prem at any time, or the other way around, like it should happen in Brazil right now. Maybe I would like to abandon GitHub for the time being and switch to GitLab because GitHub has an outage. Like, for example, in 2017, GitLab had an outage, the biggest in their history, that for some customers lasted 2 weeks. Imagine not being able to work in any way for over 2 weeks. That's horrendous. So you need to be able to be prepared for scenarios, even the most extreme ones, when you have the backup, but it's not about just having this box. It's about how quickly you can restore the data and to what platform. So thinking about backup strategy is more about how we restore the data rather than how we protect the data on its own.
when maybe you're gonna agree with me, if developers would be 2 weeks not able to code, I would say that we are safe. It's less vulnerabilities going to production. Huh?
Unless we have a backlog to vulnerabilities to fix, no?
Yeah, like okay, guys, we have a backlog on Jira, so let's work on them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bro. Here is the company I work for. We have 15,000 developers that push 6,000 deploys a day. So 2 weeks will be catastrophe here for the business. And now about this outage immigration of platforms. Okay, I would like to ask a question for you, Greg, about the vendors. Because, for example, if I have Jira, if I have another task management tool, sorry guys, I know it's bigger than that.
Yeah,
What's the challenge about the vendors? Because we need to backup the data from the vendors and we need to restore the same data in these vendors. What's the challenge about the data itself of that vendors, no?
like
Because
parsing and so on. Huh?
exactly how to make this compatibility, what should the company be prepared for it, and can you tell a little bit more about, okay, we need to backup but we need to restore, what's the road we need to.
So I'm very glad that you brought up this question because it is a big challenge, and also I think something that we as a community should also bring up with some of the vendors. Because just to give you certain comparison, if I would like to restore my data between GitHub and GitLab, I can retrieve the most of my data, the most of my issues, PRs, projects, etc. Obviously, not everything. There are some data that are unique to one platform that I cannot restore to another. Like, for example, I cannot
Convert a
just
GitLab
copy.
CI to GitHub CI, for example, is a little bit challenge. It's
Yeah,
possible in certain level, but depending on what you
yeah.
have.
But there are things that you can do. For example, if we would think what are the things that are most important, the foundations of your software development. You have your branches, you have your issues, PRs, deployments, deployment keys, releases, etc. And those are the things that you can freely move between the platforms. However, for example, then we have those guys named Atlassians, which are not that eager to help with this. And for example, there is a huge challenge with moving closed PRs from Bitbucket to any other platform. And for somebody who cares about the whole history of changes in the code, that's a huge challenge. You've brought up Jira. Jira has extremely unique data structure. Once you look into their database, that's very difficult to replicate one platform to another. I was looking at possibility of moving data from Jira to Azure boards in Azure DevOps. However, it's still extremely difficult just to migrate it one-to-one. So, every platform is very protective of their data. In a sense, we keep data structure unique because we want customers to stay with us forever. If we make data migration easy from them, we make it easier for them to leave us and not to spend money with us any longer. But by hooking us this way, it's not only about protecting their business, they're also posing security threat for our data. Because right now, in many cases, if you are using Jira and Atlassian recently cut off Jira server, and I know that there are plans in the next 5 years to cut off Jira data center as well. It means that you'll be completely dependent on Jira Cloud. And what if Jira has an outage?
For sure, yeah.
You just remember me a story, quick one. That a guy, insurance company called a guy, and the guy's offering to sell insurance service, right? And the guy said, "Oh, thank you, but I already have insurance, health insurance." And he noticed that the person on the phone was like, "Okay, then, like, upset. Yeah, and this guy is a marketing guy. I think you know Benhur is. I missed the name of this guy now. It will come in a moment. Murilo Gun. Murilo Gun. It's
See,
a famous. He was comedian. Now he's a marketing guy. Whatever. Here in Brazil. There in Brazil. And then he was mentioning like, if the values of your company is not to make your customer happy and it's just sales, you have a problem. Because he was saying like, you are offering me health insurance. If I say that I already have, means that my life is already insured. If something happened, my family will be supported, whatever. So you should be happy for this. Oh, great, thank you. Like, good that you already have, or even discuss, maybe you want to change or something, but like, be happy for that in the end, because it's the same mission of your company, like, to make sure that their lives are safe in this case, right? Protected. So this, as what Greg just brought, is like exactly this. You have your data there, but if you have a problem, you can back up, but you will not be able to restore another platform because you need to be hooked to me because I want you as a customer forever. And this is one of the things that in the security area, I would say we need to fight more and more against because it's about data, not about vendor or tool or whatever. Yeah, it's in the end, it's about protecting softwares that control our lives. So we need always to bring this topic, and it was a very good point. Good that we are on this kind of discussion here to bring this light, let's say, to this topic to the people. Huh? I think it's a good point.
perfect, perfect. Very good, very good location because now we have two lessons here. First, once we hire a service, we contract a service, we need to check what's backable or not, and about the compatibility. So that's the first thing because we have a bunch of scenarios that a company should stop their operation, so that's running out of funds. They could be blocked in our country because of politics things. The company could be attacked and have an security incident, and how they provide the backup for our site, not only a zip file that do not works in any other platform, but the real data that I can read, I can parse, I can understand, and I can integrate or move to another company,
Provider, yeah,
service
vendor.
provider. That and about that, I want to talk a little bit about cloud.
Wait. Can I make one comment before this?
Yeah,
So hold this one. I just came to my mind, and I don't want to lose. You guys like Mission Impossible movies, right?
for sure.
Of course.
Everybody likes Mission Impossible. Huh? From the first
Sorry.
movie, yeah, from the first movie so far, usually when Tom Cruise wants to, how to say, penetrate company facilities and so on, usually there is kind of outage of energy because the companies will rely on generators, and usually the systems that, like, when they turn off and when they come back, the backup systems has no security protections. So Greg mentioned, like, okay, you back up your code, protect your source code, etc., but the policies, brand protection, they're not there when you restore, for example, if you're not taking care of these configurations. So if hackers knows about this, he might create the outage for you. You will be forced to restore the backup, which you don't have your protections, which you don't have your WAF applications. You got the point, right? So
Yes,
Mission
not
Impossible is the
nothing
perfect example for this.
perfect because, for example, they do not encrypt the backup because the work for decrypt that backup could be take a while.
Yeah, somehow. I think it's one point to Greg to ask after, like, last question, encryption, the compressing, all these kind of things. But bring your cloud topic. I don't want to make you to forget.
Greg, one thing that we face everywhere is our cloud configuration. Okay, which services are running, about the configuration. Oh no, everything is in Terraform. Well designed. No, of course we already know that is perfect scenario that probably do not exist in any place. What is important? What matters for cloud?
Greg, can you hear us?
Okay, so just to come back quickly also to one thing brought by Cassio before I answer the question from Ben-Hur.
Okay.
I think that important thing also about having the backups is testing the backups. So whenever you have an outage, you know, okay, what is coming back to us? Because that's another common mistake, that company always runs the backups, but they never try making the restore until they have the actual incident. So I actually recommend to at least monthly or quarterly make test restore from our backup. Obviously, you don't need to necessarily try to restore the whole infrastructure, or at least not every month, but try to restore certain parts of it, like, for example, specific repositories, specific projects, to be aware of, okay, in the case of incident, this is what comes back, and this is what we're missing. Is it acceptable for us? If yes, that's great. If not, how we can fix that. And when it comes to cloud and what to care about, I think that the most important thing is, first of all, thinking about overall cloud, I would say, integrity, in a sense that I want to make sure that whenever I'm using cloud service, people that have access to it are as restricted as possible. And even though we're always saying that, okay, we should have this minimum access privilege rule implemented, in many cases, we are not keeping it. I have one, I would say, case study that I like sharing recently about my customer from Germany who has been subcontracting software development to external software house. And just to make life easier for the contractor in setting up certain automations, they gave them extremely high privileges in the cloud for managing it, managing their AWS, managing their GitHub, etc. And after some time, they had a dispute about the quality of the work of the subcontractor. And as a result of this, a company decided to withhold the payment for the subcontractor. And because subcontractor was not that nice guy, he decided to cut off the company completely from their GitHub and AWS, just because they gave him too much permissions just to make their life easier. So I think that important point here is to, first of all, care what we are sharing with whom, etc. And, if the company has ISO, for example, implemented, we should have all these policies in place. But how often are we checking if those policies are actually enforced, or whether they are just a theory?
Answer their question, Ben. We can always have funny and bad examples of how not to do things. It's amazing how this how it works. Okay, but just to come to the end of the episode, because times fly, we didn't even have a break
DevSecOps. DevSecOps.
of our voices. Now we had a bit of the break. Greg, one of last question, so we can already address to the end and say thank you and so on. In the whole process of backing up and restoring, and Benur mentioned like timing for the encryption. That I assume that this kind of solutions and this kind of strategy, of course, it's kind of optional. Okay, I want to encrypt my data, or I don't want to encrypt my data, or what kind of data, and so on. Also because of timing, you need to restore something as quick as possible, and if you take 2 days just to decrypt something, it might not be feasible. And pricing, because I already need to pay for my hot data. I don't know, I pay 10 for my hot data, and then I need to pay double to start the backups if I want to back up everything. It's more or less like this, or no, I can compress my information, I can zip everything, let's say, and of course it's less size, so of course it's cheaper. How, just in summary, how is this process? Is there everything there, or copy and paste?
Sure. So, while making the backup, there are a couple different methods to optimize this storage usage. The first one is obviously compression of the data, which is always helpful. Another one, which is extremely, I would say, smart, is running something called incremental backup. And this is actually the great practice for DevOps organizations. Incremental backup is when we back up only the things that have been added or modified since the last backup we've made. Meaning that every day we're just taking a small chunk of data that actually changed and we store only that. And obviously we're going to think that, okay, if I'm about to run backups on my own, how am I supposed to do this? And this is when we touch to the point when, sometimes it's not always good to try to reinvent the wheel at the whatever cost. It's sometimes good to reach out to the company which is already specialized in backup technologies and trust them because they have those things already figured out. Like, for example, incremental backups. Or another thing which is also popular is deduplication. When we are cutting the data into very, very small chunks, and then if the chunk is something that is repeatable between different backups we make, we are not saving this chunk multiple times, we are only saving it once. That's the duplication explained in very simple words. So there are ways to optimize it, but here we come to the point when if you want to make backup by yourself at all cost, it will probably end up costing you more rather than if you employ third-party solution dedicated for backup, because it's not only about automating the task that you're doing, it's also about bringing efficiency into it. Efficiency in backup duration, efficiency in copy size, efficiency in way to store the copy. And also in many cases, efficiency in how to protect the data afterwards. Because, for example, if you would make backup, probably you would just download it into zip file. You would encrypt that zip file with encryption key. Fingers crossed you put that encryption key somewhere safe, and that's it. But there are better ways to protect data, for example, from malicious actors, like, for example, chunking the data. So cutting them in a way that they are non-readable, non-executable, meaning that even if malicious actor would lay their hands on your backup, they are still not able to do anything with it. So I think that to answer your question, there are ways to do it, multiple different. The question is whether you want to figure it out yourself or maybe ask around for company or specialist that already knows how to do it.
Awesome. It's a topic that we rarely talk, backing up in this kind. I mean, we talk, but not on this level. That's why this episode is data protection in another level, right? So it's an amazing thing. I have one just last example, and then you can make your comments and then we can close. I remember when I was maybe my second job as developer, I was doing some coding as usual, and I deleted some data in production, as who never did, right? So I deleted some data in production, and it was a company in Brazil that were basically creating the driver license document. So it was something very critical, and I deleted data in production, not the whole database and so on, but I deleted some data that shouldn't delete. But the company, they didn't have even backups. They had kind of mirroring. So it was live backing up, like basically like this, right? So you have the hot data and the same data in somewhere else. So basically lost the information for 5 minutes, and then we were able to restore already and have the data there. So one thing is to back up things from the day before. Another thing is that you have mirroring and your live information duplicated already somewhere else. Of course, depends on the criticality of the business and so on and so forth. Yeah? But even this kind of discussions people should have in mind, of course, according to their business. Yeah? We're not this thing that we're discussing here, for example. I mean, backups and this good practice for everybody. Yeah? But maybe small companies, very small companies, they don't have even budget for this or storage or strategies. But of course, companies like Greg mentioned, and the one that he's working, they have also strategy and business model to allow everybody to have this kind of thing, right? They have the accessibility of this. Huh? So that was just my last example. Maybe you have some last comments, then Greg gives some final message, then we say bye-bye.
Because that's a terrifying self-question about, this SQL query is taking too long to execute.
Oh, and it was the lead command and they have success message after.
Okay, guys. So first, most important, has the backup in this situation is important. But but to not allow someone to run a delete command in production is much better in that
Much better.
case.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, let's segregate the responsibility here. Greg, one last question is, if you can please talk a little bit more about your company for us and the solution.
Thank you, Manicure, for this question. So all my knowledge of the topic comes from my work at the company called Git Protect, gitprotect.io. We specialize in DevOps data security, in how you can back up data from your GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Jira, or Azure DevOps, and how you can, first of all, efficiently back them up while optimizing the storage use, while making sure that your data has the whole ransomware protection and the scope of your backup is as wide as possible. And then how you can restore this data in any scenario, including this, I think, the most important one. So being able to switch from one platform to another. So being able to switch from Bitbucket to GitHub, GitLab to GitLab, etc., or switch from cloud to on-premise. So we've spent years studying the DevOps data structure and how to keep those data safe. So if you guys ever think how I can improve security of my source code, my repositories, my metadata, my Jira projects, and don't make doctorate beforehand to know how to do it, but ask somebody experienced, gitprotect.io. There's a good chance that you'll meet with me and we have a good chat on how to do that for you.
Awesome.
Great.
So Git Protect, all the links and all the information will be also on the description of this video on the YouTube channel. You can also follow up. I think Greg will allow as well. You can put his LinkedIn so you can reach out with him, ask for POCs, discounts, and so on.
Discounts especially.
Okay, then, Greg, you have any final words? And is something else that you would like to add?
There is this one message that I'm always sharing when we're talking about the data security overall or cybersecurity. This is a thought that was told to me by my sister, who is a lawyer. And she always told me that you're writing agreements for the time of war, not the time of peace. And I'm applying the same rule to my approach to cybersecurity in general. It's not about just having something that's good enough for time of peace. It's something that will work in the time of war, when you've lost everything, when your data centers are flooded, when your employees are trying to steal your data, what you can do then.
Perfect analogy. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Okay, then, Greg, thank you for your time one more time. For sure, we'll invite you for next episodes where we can discuss further topics. Benhur, thank you for your time as well. Stay safe. And we see you guys next week on one more episode of DevSecOps Podcast. I'm Cássio Pereira.
I am Benhur.
And we have Greg here as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.
That was DevSecOps, your cybersecurity and technology podcast. DevSecOps, finishing now.
Hello, this episode is over. Thanks for watching, and I really appreciate if you share this content with your friends, with your co-workers. For sure they will enrich their knowledge as well, as the same as you just did when you listen or watch it to this specific episode of DevSecOps podcast. We really enjoy that you were here with us, so please share this content, share this knowledge. And here there's 2 more contents that I strongly recommend you to watch now or save for later, but don't miss out. For sure you will enrich even more your knowledge.